Stop before it's too late. Prince Louis risks becoming a rogue Harry if Kate is not sober. The tiny prince has become a huge favorite for his cheeky antics, but his parents, William and Catherine, now face a choice that could change his life. In the world of the royals, there are a few things that are certain. King Charles is going to show up somewhere in the countryside wearing a five-figure suit, all excited about hedgerows. Queen Camilla is always going to have a slightly wishful look in her eye, like she's picturing that pint of Gordon's just waiting for her at home. And Catherine is going to spend an inordinate amount of money on some dress that looks like an aide added some magic to it using a trusty sewing machine and some late 80s Travel Lodge curtains. And what about that precious little Prince Louis? Well, if you put him out in public, maybe near a military parade or out on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, that little boy is going to guarantee Fleet Street's photo editors a cheeky, charming shot. The last year has shown us that that little Louis is a walking, cute front page. But the thing is, maybe that's not great. Maybe we really need to stop. Glastonbury Festival took place over the weekend, and that transformed hundreds of acres of Somerset into a muddy bog. 200,000 people pretended that they were having a great time, paying to experience the same grim conditions as the Battle of Bosworth Field. And there at the festival, and soon enough it was slapped all over Twitter, was a flag recreating that moment during last year's Platinum Jubilee when little Louis reacted to the RAF flypast, and the late Queen seemed absolutely delighted. Without a doubt, that image is cute as all get out, and you would have to be a pretty evil person to not be thoroughly charmed and delighted by it. But I actually believe, looking at that Glasgow flag, that we maybe have reached a tipping point. Louis has gone from royal child to pop culture caricature, from child to entertaining character, and is that really fair for him? Because at the end of the day, he's just a little boy. He is not a meme. If the royal family and the whole world want to break the centuries-long curse of despair, then at this moment, we've got to do it. Because for Louis's parents, William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, the where do we even begin challenge is how to raise their two spares, Louis and his older sister, Princess Charlotte, so that they're not condemned to the fate of their spare forebears. Let's start with Princess Margaret. Well, she spent her years lacking any real purpose in life and also drinking way too much. Well, Prince Andrew ended up with that ridiculous ego, a sense of entitlement, and best case, pathologically poor taste in friends. And Prince Harry, let's not even get into him. Never has the fate of people born so close to the throne been more of an issue thanks to Harry and all of his outbursts. Harry is a person whose whole adult life seems to have been shaped by two big things: the tragic loss of his mother when he was only 12 years old, and his status as a chromosomal backup plan for the monarchy. Now, one of the important points that Harry's book, Spare, makes is that a sense of inferiority was drummed into him over and over again throughout his childhood and teenage years. Harry wrote, "I was the shadow, the support, the plan B." So for William and Catherine, the big challenge that they are facing right now is how to prevent this from ever happening again with their children. How do they make sure that Charlotte and Louis do not feel like they're walking organ donors or whatever? And for the Prince and Princess of Wales, even if they can raise their kids with rigid equality and with a real independent sense of self, there are still practical issues that no one has even started to talk about. Most obviously, there is no real job description or formal role for the spares. I mean, even today at only 9 years old, George has his entire life laid out for him. He'll go to Eton, he'll go to some university, maybe he'll take a gap year, he'll have a bit of time in the military, and then his royal career will slowly subsume everything else. He's going to take on patronages, he's going to learn how to run an investiture, and he's going to pick up the finer points of knighting somebody without cutting off an ear. Now, the prince's religion, his day job, and where he is going to live are all etched in stone, so that resigns him to a fate that he doesn't really have any say over. He's never really going to have the freedom that other primary school children currently enrolled in the UK have. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Louis are facing lives which are mostly going to be defined by what they're not. They'll never be king or queen, they're not the firstborn, they're not the child whose face will one day be on every single pound coin out there. And by the time they're grown, the only remaining working members of the royal family are going to be their parents, and perhaps their great-uncle and great-aunt, Edward and Sophie, the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh. So that could mean that the little whale siblings are going to have no choice but to go into the family business. Only they're going to have to pick up the lesser engagements and patronages, all the while adhering to the number one rule to never, ever overshadow the heir. In the future, Charlotte and Louis are going to be expected to pull their weight, while at the same time accepting their supporting cast status in a play that has been running for 1,000 years at this point. And it doesn't really matter how committed they are, how hard they work. It doesn't really matter how motivated they are. They are never going to be number one. It could be that one day Charlotte and Louis are expected to sacrifice many of the freedoms of normal life for the sake of the crown, but they're never going to actually have an opportunity to wear the crown. We also need to consider that the roles they're going to assume someday are both very important but also a bit vague. There are no guidelines or rules except that they might end up getting a pasting if they mess it up or overstep. Biographer Tom Quinn recently told the Daily Beast, the child most in danger from life in the gilded cage is Louis. My sources say George is already treated differently, not by his parents, but by other people, and that Louis seems to play up to get attention. Quinn recently published a book called Gilded Youth, an intimate history of growing up in the royal family, and he has said Louis already seems remarkably like Harry, the Joker, and it may be that he will struggle as much as Harry did to find a role in the royal family. Meanwhile, Harry raised similar concerns when he was talking to The Telegraph's Brian E. Gordon. He said, and though William and I have talked about it once or twice, and he has made it very clear to me that his kids are not my responsibility, I still feel a responsibility knowing that out of those three children, at least one will end up like me, the spare, and that hurts. That worries me. Even in the short term, the problems are already starting. How in the world can William and Catherine make sure that their kids enjoy their childhood while also preparing them for the surreal, bizarre lives that lie ahead of them? Now, over the last decade, there has been a lot of readjusting of the governing principles and the rules when it comes to the photographing of royal kids, which is why we rarely, if ever, see paparazzi photos of the three. And there also needs to be a wider societal and cultural recalibration and some kind of boundary or two introduced. There needs to be some line between the whale's children's childhoods and their already nascent public lives themselves. We do owe it to Louis to not make a joke out of him. He doesn't need to be a punchline or a cartoon. And if we don't succeed, then 30 years from now, it's going to be him sitting on a sofa and pouring out his hurt feelings to Oprah.